It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical, Mainz and Dutts. I'm your host, Mainz, and my colleague in the Danger Zone in Rainford, it's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
So we're in the middle, or towards the end, I'm not entirely sure, of the Olympics, where obviously it's, for many people, it's the pinnacle of 4 years of hard work, training, sacrifice, and it is to finish on that podium, especially if you're a gold medalist, it's the ultimate achievement. It's the one thing these athletes will be known for, right?
Okay.
So my question is, in any sport that you've played, what is the Mainz game? What's the one game in any of these sports that you look back on and think, that was me, I raised it, I looked down on everyone on that day and I was incredible.
I one shot 73, which is 1 over par, round Royal Liverpool, which is the open course in the Wirral, in Wales, as it's known. From the back tees, so from the championship tees, 1 over par in a, can't remember the name of the competition now, but it was between Liverpool Uni, Manchester Uni and Leeds Uni, and I won that, and my team, Liverpool, also won. So yeah, that would be 73 round, Hoylake, Royal Liverpool. Yourself?
I have 3 that I can think of, because they're all in cricket, because as much as I'm not very good at cricket, I'm shite at football. And I'm a much better cricketer than I was a footballer. The 3 that for me leap out, there was a game we played at Newton Le Willows, and it was literally, I've never fielded better.
Mm-hmm.
I only got 1 catch, but literally whenever I was fielding, the ball didn't get past me once. I was throwing myself around. I was filthy, proper. So that was my fielding. But I have two batting performances. One of them, it was 2009, and we were struggling a bit against Prestatyn, and I was in terrible form. I'd stood down from the third team captaincy and was concentrating on the fits, and I scored 54. It was my first 50 for 3 years, and we won by 56 runs. So that was, it was the top score in the match. It was the only one, I think, the only person who got over 30. But then there was another one in 2013, and it was only the second game I played after Zoe was born. I went out to bat, and we were 18 for 4 on a classic Parkhaven road, and I scored 56. And again, wickets were falling off the other end, and I got us to 112 all out, and we bowled the opposition out for 56. So again, it was almost my contribution was the difference.
You contributed to said victory. Very nice,
yeah.
Neil. Very nice. An interesting start to the thing. I know you don't really like the Olympics. I enjoy watching it, even though I don't really know many of the sports. But it's always fun to watch people win and cry, or lose and cry.
Yeah. You're speaking to someone, of course, who has family members who used to watch, was it Deal or No Deal, and cheer when people got the penny and lost, the 100,000 or whatnot. And so, people who make grandiose claims at the chase and then lose. Yeah, these are people I'm related to. So it's always nice to see people win. It's not.
Okay. On with the show this week. Bit of NFL news to start. We have NFL news from training camps. 3 bits of big news: 2 injuries and a quarterback setting a franchise on fire. We then are going to start our delve into draft strategies. This week we're talking Bestball, and what I would describe as a newer version of the fantasy game, and Neil is going to enlighten us on what it is, what it does, and what's the best strategy to do. And then, in theory, me and Neil are going to give our expertise to our division, and that is the NFC East. Looking forward to talking about it. Unlike everybody else waxing over the Dallas Cowboys, we're going to actually talk about all 4 teams. So there you go.
Can't wait.
So Neil, let's start with some NFL news. First things first, I know you will have read the transcript. Did you watch the Aaron Rodgers press conference?
No, if I want to watch people being petty, small-minded and make everything about themselves, I'll listen to myself for 20 minutes.
Ooh. I see what you did there, and I understand what you're saying. I'm not 100% sure I agree, although I do like the idea. It was very you, is that someone asked him one question, like, how's it going, Aaron? And 15 minutes later he stopped talking. Highly hilarious. I think I found it really interesting that basically there was a lot of people, mainly in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area, suggesting that Adam Schefter was just making shit up.
Because he does that.
Yeah, correct, right. And basically the 15 minutes was a tick box exercise to highlight how right Adam Schefter was on everything to do with Aaron Rodgers. Like, he may as well have done the press conference himself. I found it really interesting that, as with all professional sportsmen, they are petty and small-minded and think it's all about them. There's a reason for that, because it usually is all about them. And, sometimes I do think that a fatal flaw in the Packers organisation, which can sometimes be a strength, but in this situation is a weakness, is they don't have an owner. They don't have someone to massage someone's ego. They don't have someone who you can take on a yacht to Monaco and wine and dine. They just do things business-like. And sometimes, elite quarterbacks who are MVPs want things more than business-like decisions. He believed he was a lame duck because no one spoke to him. And Brian Gutekunst's like, you've got 3 years left, what are you talking about? It's very different, and it shows to me the complete lack of communication and understanding of their franchise player from the front office. Now, we can attack Aaron Rodgers, and we have in the past, right? But like, if I've got a really successful MVP who's basically allowed my team to win every year, okay, not Super Bowls, but divisions and a Super Bowl, every now and again I may ask A, how he's doing, and B, what does he think of the decisions we're making. Like, now people may think that you shouldn't do that, and that's cool, but they're wrong. Like, that's not how you need to get everybody on board on decisions you're making, especially the people at the very top. I'm not saying you should consult your long snapper, but maybe you should consult your quarterback. You don't have to like that, but I do believe that's the right thing to do. 15 minutes of Aaron Rodgers talking saliently, not loudly, was really interesting. I'm not, as people who've listened to the show for years, I'm not a massive Aaron Rodgers fan, but I thought it was really engaging. He made some very valid points, and he basically set the Green Bay Packers franchise on fire and said, I'll win or lose this year, I'm out of here, and you're going to have to deal with the fact you won't have a quarterback, and that's not my problem.
Yeah, it was a line that Brian Gutekunst made where he said communication could have been better on both sides, which was just bizarre because, well, what was Rodgers supposed to do? Just ring up and say, oh, hi, Brian. Just checking that you're not planning on burning a first-round pick on a quarterback. Oh, you are? Okay, that's a stupid thing to do. Okay, hugs and kisses, bye. Now, clearly Rodgers has not had that relationship with the Packers front office, because why would they just, if they had, why would they just suddenly stop? They've never consulted him on personnel decisions, which is why Jordy Nelson got cut. It's why Jake Kumaro got cut. It's why Alex Van Pelt got fired. He's never been consulted. So clearly it's, as he's getting older, he thinks, okay, I need to maximise my shot therefore I think now you should start consulting me. Whereas this, in terms of business, this extremely successful business enterprise has gone on famously without consulting a salaried employee from another business area. So they're like, no, we don't need to ask you anything, actually, Aaron. I say, your contract says you're the quarterback. You're not a personnel decision maker. You're not a financial advisor. We'll get by without you. And pretty much what gets put on the coaching staff is their problem. And then by extension, it's your problem. We've seen, I think we can assume that maybe Tom Brady wanted similar input in New England and wasn't getting it, which is why he left and pretty much went to a team that would say, yeah, what do you want us to do, Tom? How can we help you to help us? When you consider how mediocre the Buccaneers have been for the best part of 2 decades, sorry, Daggers, but I speak the truth, that's an almost understandable opinion. Whereas the Packers will look at it and say, well, no, we've won this many division titles, we've been to this many title games, we've only won 1 Super Bowl, but we're always thereabouts. Why should we change now? Without realising that, this man might have opinions that differ with yours, and he might think we can be more successful if you actually listen to me. I mean, it's telling that since 2010, all the wide receivers drafted by the Green Bay Packers are either on the Green Bay Packers or out of the NFL. They're not playing elsewhere because they're not very good. I mean, you can argue some of the ones they've drafted, aside from Devontae Adams, aren't any good anymore. But it's telling the fact that essentially it looks like Aaron Rodgers has told them, go out and bring me one of my mates back.
Yeah.
Not Jordan. Jordy's knackered. Bring me the other one.
Give me the other one. I think I am perfectly comfortable that the Packers believe that they didn't do anything wrong. And that's cool. I just think that is a very 1980s, 1990s mentality. It's if we drift back to the Olympics, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, in fact, if Simone Biles would have been in the gymnastics and just stopped because of why she stopped, because complete mental block, wasn't ready, wasn't, mental space wasn't right, she would have been a quitter, she would have been a loser, she would have been all these different things, which she is not. She's won 100, multiple medals in the Olympics and other championships. And I just think that you're using a old, outdated mentality for something that's new. Aaron Rodgers even said in his press conference, he thought he needs to clear his mental space and, came back, whatever. I think if I'm the Packers, like, you've lost this one, in my opinion, regardless of what happens this year. And you need to really think long and hard about your player development, personal relationship, things going forward. Because as Aaron Rodgers quite rightly points out, NFL players do not go to the Green Bay Packers for free agency in almost all situations apart from maybe a handful. So you need to get it right at draft, and you need to make sure those players are supported and feel loved so they stay, because it's very rare that someone who gets drafted somewhere else is going to come here. So you need to think about this long term. Now let's move on. Couple of injuries. First one, Dak Prescott. Shoulder soreness, weakness, fatigue, not really sure. At the moment, no real major concerns. I assume that there's no real fantasy impact for this.
Not at the moment. If he's still experiencing soreness in 10 days' time, then I think people can justifiably get a bit concerned. But at the moment, it's day 2 of camp. As we record this, they've had 2 days, probably starting day 3 today. which means Hard Knocks will be starting soon, of course. Yeah, it's come back to me in a week and a bit. It's veteran maintenance coming off a serious injury in which he didn't use all these muscles properly for a long time. I'm not concerned.
If we move on, Neil, Carson Wentz, breaking news really, literally breaking, has a undisclosed or undiagnosed foot issue. I believe he's going to see, I think it might be Richard Stedman, the doctor, for this concern. Possibility, I was reading just before we started, it's 9:15 on Friday, that surgery is possible, not probable, and that there is a possibility he could miss weeks, but not multiple weeks. First things first, how many games does he have to play for the Eagles to get a first round pick?
He has to play 70% of the snaps, 75% of the snaps, or 70% if the Colts get to the playoffs. Which, as I say, it's 17 games. Apart from last season when he was benched, he's pretty much always been on course for that. So, if they're not concerned, I'm not concerned. But again, is talking about his foot problem not a violation of HIPAA? Because apparently asking him about vaccination is.
Add him to the list, right?
Yeah.
We're doing the NFC East preview. One of the teams we should be positive about, and we can be on the field, but off the field we won't be, and I may bring it up. Neil, let's get on. We said we would look at draft strategies. The first one we're going to look at is Bestball, and we will do that right now. And what I would like you to explain to the listening public is, compared to quote-unquote normal fantasy redraft, how different is Bestball?
Well, Bestball differs in one massive way, in that it's all about the draft. There is no regular season management of the team. There is no setting your lineup. There is no waiver pickups. There is no trading. You draft the team, and then as the season progresses, your league during the week will pick your best players. So if, for example, say it's a standard format league, one quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, then if you have drafted 3 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 6 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends, it will put in the players at those positions who scored the most points that week. So you don't have to worry about, which of these players do I start? The best one gets put in.
Does that mean that in drafting, because of the fact that it's just a draft and then you don't touch it, there's a different approach to drafting players in Bestball as compared to redraft?
Well, yes, because in redraft, as I say, you can take a few more risks with your picks because you can always make changes. You can always decide, I'm weak here, he's strong there, he's weak there, I'm strong here. Hey, let's make a trade. I'll give you this wide receiver, you give me your running back. You don't have that. So what you want is to be drafting players who are obviously going to give you the best chances of scoring the most points during a week. But also you might want to consider players who are a bit more volatile. The players who could be, 1 catch for 12 yards one week, but then next week they're getting 3 catches, 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. The classic Deshaun Jackson stat lines. Now, therefore, you don't have to worry about them because you're not saying to yourself, when's the boom week coming? It gets baked in. So while you want to have safe options, especially the likes of running back and wide receiver, you protect yourself a little bit more by exposing yourself to players with that volatility. So that obviously it covers bye weeks as well. You do need to factor that in. But also you're never going to take a 0 at that position because you don't have to worry about it. So obviously you want, the target magnets. You want, the stud running backs who are going to get most of the carries and hopefully a lot of the targets. But you can factor in the running back, who is a primary pass catcher, or the wide receiver who, as I say, will catch the deep shot. The tight end who's just in for touchdowns. These players are a little bit more valuable in Bestball because, as I say, you're not really managing them. You don't have to worry about them.
It's that kind of idea, Neil, and I'm in the middle of doing the FFCC best ball draft. I'm going round 17, 18. And in the 16th round, I picked Alan Lazard based on that exact same concept, right? Because he's not in my first choice team. However, there is a possibility he could have 4 catches and 2 of them are touchdowns for like 70 yards, and then he gets in your team. But you don't have to worry about, oh God, he's on my bench and he scored 20 points, because the computer will do that for itself.
In best ball, as well as it's becoming more apparent in regular leagues, stacking is not only a viable strategy, it's probably the key winning strategy, because because you're trying to expose yourself to as many prolific offenses as possible. It's always advisable to stack. If you're going to take 2 quarterbacks, make sure they are both stacked. So make sure you have wide receivers or tight ends attached to that quarterback, because you don't really want, a quarterback going off, but in your team you're hoping for the bye week replacement or the Deshaun Jackson performance. You literally want to cash in as much of that production as possible. Now, obviously, there are, depending on the roster size, that can dictate the build. The Scott Fish Bowl, for example, is not best ball, but in situations where you have 2 quarterbacks who can start, so if it's super flex, which I know underdog, which we don't have in this country, and it annoys the bejesus out of me. A sensible thing to do maybe is take 2 quarterbacks early, make sure they're productive, probably going to be rushers, and then don't worry about the position. But obviously, if you want to add an element of risk, maybe get a quarterback early, get one in the middle rounds who's boring but efficient, a Kirk Cousins, a Derek Carr, and then maybe take a swing later on a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields. That way, if Fields or Lance don't ever play, you're okay, you can get by with the others. But if they do play, then it widens the exposure at that position. In
theory, I have drafted Matthew Stafford, but I've also drafted Trey Lance for that exact same reason, that maybe he doesn't play in week 1, week 2, even week 3. But if he comes in, he has a high ceiling with rushing and the rushing touchdowns, as well as, obviously, passing touchdowns. Is there any specific players, Neil, that you look at and you think I would draft him more likely in best ball than I would do in a redraft?
Not especially, not going in blind. I think you can have strategy. You can obviously target players if you want, but it fully depends on how the draft is going. Ideally, as with most drafts, you want to be at the beginning of a run, not at the end of one. So if you see quarterbacks are going, maybe you should start thinking, can I get by if my 2 quarterback options are both Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr? Probably not. I'm going to need to get someone else and then come back and tie them in. Best ball, the strategy that our friend the Podfather always says is, if you want a player and you've looked at ADP, maybe jump around to get him. Especially if you're building a stack. Don't force it. Don't go stupid. There's no reason at all for you to take Gerald Everett in the 8th round because you want to get the Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett stack. You've already missed out on Metcalf. You're thinking, I'm going to get 2 pieces. Don't be that guy. So obviously pay attention, but also be aware of the league. See what else is happening. And be aware of runs. Don't get stuck at the end of one, and certainly don't get stuck trying to start another one just out of desperation. But to say that there are specific players you target, no. That depends on the league, it depends on the situation, and it depends on the round.
Fantastic, Neil. Excellent. That is it on the draft strategy for best ball. So let's get on with the NFC East. Neil, NFC East schedule. They play the NFC South. They play the AFC West. They play one AFC East team, one NFC North team, and one NFC West team. Usual fare, big question, fantasy darling, and then based on the over-under, more likely to be discussed by Draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl, or not at all. The first team, America's team, the team that keeps the lights on in the NFL Network, ESPN and NBC, and that is the Dallas Cowboys. The big question for the Dallas Cowboys is, can the defense help the offense this season?
they've not exactly gone out of their way. I mean, I know they did devote most of their draft to improving the defense. Obviously, they took Micah Parsons first overall. They replaced Mike Nolan with Dan Quinn. But the defense still looks a little bit like, if Randy Gregory doesn't get suspended again, if Malik Hooker is healthy, if Micah Parsons actually is a solid citizen and a contributor on the field, it looks a little bit still like wish casting for me, which is obviously a problem. Not for me, not a problem for me. But offensively, they're explosive. Assume Dak Prescott is healthy. We assume Amari Cooper is going to be healthy. All the parts on this is an offense that, especially in fantasy terms, you want pieces of. But you do worry that if they do come across a team that has a clue defensively, they're not going to win a street fight. It needs to be a shootout. And you're just inviting disaster, especially if you try and go in against someone like Washington, or someone of that, or San Francisco, someone of that ilk.
I do look and think there's two things I think they've done. One is they realised the horrific mistake they made by hiring Mike Nolan as their defensive coordinator last year, and assume that Dan Quinn, even if he's middling, even if he's probably below middling, that he is a massive upgrade on Mike Nolan, and therefore they will be better just by accident, really. And then that in the classic soccer strategy of, if plan A doesn't work, just do plan A better, they're just going to score more points, right? They're just looking to score loads of points, and just assume that for the majority of their games they will score more points than the other team. And to be fair, there's a lot of talent that they've got. Dak, Zeke, Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, to name but just 5 or 6. So that is a feasible way of going about it. It's not the most sensible approach. It may be fun to watch, but it does mean, again, that there's a lot of reliance on Dak. They paid him a lot of money, so I assume they believe he's capable of doing it, and to be fair, so do I. But can he stay healthy? We hope so. And then it's just, can they not be the Dallas Cowboys of the past 30 years and do something stupid to balls this all up?
Let's hope they can.
Well, yeah, exactly right. Neil, who's the fantasy darling on the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, the obvious one for me would be Michael Gallup. Now, obviously, they have Amari Cooper, they have CeeDee Lamb, they have Ezekiel Elliott. These are all people who are going to be taken among the top players at their position. Michael Gallup, we go back to Bestball, is a bit more of a volatile option. He gets the downfield shots, so he gets the chunk plays. He's not going to. None of these wide receivers are going to get 30% target shares. Not the way the offense runs, unless something happens to them. But they have spoke this year that maybe they're going to move these players around a bit more. So it's not just going to be CeeDee Lamb stuck in the slot. Gallup is out at X and running wind sprints. But for wide receiver 46, where he's currently going, he does seem to be a low-cost way of getting a piece of this offense that is ridiculously prolific. Another player is Blake Jarwin, who was supposed to break out last season but got injured before the season started. Even without him, in the games that Dak Prescott played last season, they targeted the tight end on 17% of their targets. Now, I assure you, Blake Jarwin is a lot more athletic than Dalton Schultz. So if they continue that type of work for someone like Jarwin, he's a nice value, considering he's going at something like tight end 23. So he's a very, very late in the draft. If you want you want to almost punt tight end, he's someone I'd be considering.
Over under for the Dallas Cowboys, no surprise really, is 9.5. Why I say no surprise is that Vegas always puts them high because people always bet on them. They have 6 primetime games in America. One of them is Thanksgiving, that this year against the Las Vegas Raiders, which is an interesting one. Neil, Dallas Cowboys more likely to be discussed by DraftNix, not at all, Week 18 or in the Super Bowl.
I'm going to say Week 18 because with the offensive firepower they have, you'd expect them to be in contention in this crappy division. Super Bowl, be 8th. It's the Dallas Cowboys, they don't do it anymore.
I tend to agree. I tend to think that, if we look at it and you go, okay, the division isn't great, and because the division isn't great, that means it will almost undoubtedly be week 18, even if that means they're not winning 12, 13, 14 games, right?
Absolutely
they're not doing that. This division is still quite a way behind, I guess, the best teams in the NFC, the Bucks, Packers, etc. The schedule is, not great to start with. First two games are at the Bucks and at the Chargers. So at the Bucks and at the Chargers, Neil, which could quite conceivably be 0-2. They're then on Monday Night Football at home against the Philadelphia Eagles, which is pretty spectacular scheduling for everybody concerned. Because either, they could be 1-1, but if they're 2-0 and playing Philadelphia, the world will be on hooks, and the same if they're 0-2. So brace yourself. Also, you played them last game in Philadelphia, which will be cool if you could help me out there. Nice one, appreciate it. No airbreasting quarterbacks this year, if that's okay with you.
Get stuffed.
Thanks. That wasn't me, that was your team. Next, over to the New York Football Giants. Almost feels like the forgotten team in this division. The least talked about, that is for sure. Neil, a big question for the New York Football Giants is, what should we expect from the offense with all the pieces now available?
Well, their offense, is going to be hampered by the fact that it goes as far as Daniel Jones can take them. Now, they scored 25 offensive touchdowns last year. That's terrible. It was the same number as the New York Jets, who got the second overall pick. So that should tell you something.
And we're coached by Adam Gase.
Yeah. Touchdown regression alone tells us that this team is going to score more points next year. But let's be honest. What we have seen of Daniel Jones thus far is a quarterback who's not very good. He has ball security issues. He can't make the easy reads. Sorry, he says here. He's struggled. He has not looked like a player that you should have taken the 6th overall pick on, or whatever he was taken. He has struggled. He has brought down the skill position players he's had, who were not great to begin with, let's be honest. Solid pros, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram. But they made it perfectly clear they want this offense to go through Saquon Barkley, and then they lost Barkley, and it had to be put on Daniel Jones' shoulders, and he was not up to it. Now, yes, they've invested again. They brought in my boy Kenny Golladay. They've signed Kyle Rudolph. Travis Rudolph, Kyle Rudolph. But again, this offense is only going to go as far as the creativity that stems from the genius mind of Jason Garrett and the play of your quarterback. Now, you'll know, we're going to come to them in a minute, but I'm not exactly over the moon with enthusiasm about the Philadelphia Eagles this year. They're going to finish higher than the Giants, because this is a mediocre team with delusions of grandeur who are butthurt that in finishing 6-10 last year, they didn't win a division. Oh, God. Let's focus on the right battles to win here, shall we? I mean, the fact that their 100% Pierre Fume is aimed at the Philadelphia Eagles sustains me in a way you would not believe. It's the, I can feel your anger. I've gone full Palpatine on this. This is a mediocre team with a mediocre front office. A head coach who I don't think we know, with an offense that, as already shown, doesn't really work. They have to be better. Daniel Jones has to be better. But even if he is, there's a good chance Gettleman's gone anyway. And there's no guarantee that the next guy who comes in is going to say, yeah, we can build around him. So, I don't think they're very good. But I love the fact that they think they are.
Okay. We'll come on to a couple of those comments later. I think they were decent on defense last year. I would expect that to be similar. They were terrible on offense. I think, undoubted. And this is the fatal flaw when you draft a quarterback high in the first round and he's not very good. Even if he's better this year, there's no. I just don't see a situation where you're thinking, oh, this guy we need to give all of our money to. Saquon Barkley, drafted ridiculously high, injured, still not 100% fit. It's almost like you shouldn't take running backs dead early in drafts, but who knew that situation? They were mediocre last year. I expect them to be mediocre again. I, however, don't think they'll be last in the division, but I think that's a different conversation for later in the show. They're just blur. They're grey. They're beige. They're, lemonade, vanilla ice cream. I don't see, apart from the fact they'll probably beat Washington twice because they always do, because that's how they roll. I don't see a major situation where this team's any good. 6-7 wins probably. Competitive in the division, but I don't see them doing anything. I look at 2 road games, which are weirdly Monday Night Football, where they're at Kansas City and at the Bucs, and think, that's weird that you'd put those 2 games on Monday night, apart from the fact that you get the New York market. Neil, New York Football Giants, who is their fantasy darling?
Well, again, it's just a weird fact of where they're going in drafts that makes them something of a darling. Let's say Kenny Golladay is currently going wide receiver 26. Now, the last time we saw Golladay over the course of a full season, he was one of the NFL's best downfield pass catchers. He was winning contested catches left, right, and centre. Well, that could translate somewhat to Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones's deep ball accuracy last year was excellent. It was very good. Couldn't do it too often because, A, Jason Garrett doesn't call those type of things, and B, you actually have to protect him, and their offensive line is still a Greek tragedy. But if he can, link up with Golladay and take the shots downfield, maybe use him in the red zone, then someone who's, he's going as wide receiver 26. I don't think Golladay is going to be a wide receiver 1 in this offense, but I think he's certainly going to return slightly more value than wide receiver 26.
Over-under for the New York Football Giants is 7. Neil, more likely to be discussed by Draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
I think not at all is their high watermark. They would hope that it wouldn't be Draftniks, because obviously that means that Daniel Jones has cratered, and there's a good chance maybe that they all get fired. But aside from a good defence that really showed its teeth towards the back end of the season when they played some really crappy teams, what can you hang your hat on this team doing really, really well?
I don't think there is anything, right? I think that's fair. I think I think it's not at all as well. I think they'll win games because they always seem to do that, or most seasons anyway. I don't think they're any good. I don't think they're anywhere near as good as Dallas. I don't think that they're as good as Washington. But I just, they're a middling team. As I said, they've only got 3 primetime games. They're the first Thursday night football game against Washington, funnily enough, in FedEx, and then play at the Chiefs and at the Bucs, which are, Bloody Mary type games for them. But there you go. The New York Football Giants, vanilla ice cream. On to a team I think we differ on slightly, it sounds like. And that is the Philadelphia Eagles. The big question for the Philadelphia Eagles is the Jalen Hurts fantasy buzz going to lead to wins on the field?
Probably not. Jalen Hurts is probably going into this season with as little security as any starting quarterback has, because the Eagles have been linked quite aggressively to possibly making a move for Deshaun Jackson. before, during,
Watson.
or after his legal problems.
Watson.
Who did I say?
Jackson.
Sorry.
He's a former wide receiver.
Yeah, not been linked with him again. Deshaun Watson, sorry. So before, during, or after his legal issues are sorted out, it's not really been stated. Obviously, then that leads to think that, well, are they just... No, we love Jalen Hurts, but we only love Deshaun Watson more. No. It means they're not settled at quarterback. It means they don't believe their 2022 starter is on the roster. Unless you think it's Nick Mullins, which personally I don't. And I certainly don't think it's Joe Flacco. This isn't a roster that got old. It was not restocked with young talent because the GM can't evaluate it. It's a roster that has question marks at offensive skill positions because the GM picks the wrong wide receiver every single damn time. It's a roster that needed reinforcements in the second round last year, but traded for a quarterback after giving your starting quarterback a big contract. There was a lot of confusion last year on and off the field. Howie Roseman was to blame for most of it, although Jeffrey Lurie signed off on it, dragging Doug Peterson into his office to complain after beating the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field. Why didn't you pass the ball more? Why don't you shut up? You know, the day you're a football genius, Jeff, you can call the plays. It's not a good team. It has on paper, a very, very strong offensive line. Not something we saw last season with the 14 different combinations of offensive line starters. Yes, 14 in 16 game weeks. Phenomenal. If they can get all 16 of their first choice players out there for 17 weeks, well, that'll help. Is the offense going to cater to the skill set of Jalen Hurts while he is the quarterback? Well, you would hope so. But we don't really know what type of offense Nick Sirianni is going to run. He's never called one. Shane Steichen has called an offense, but he was overseen by Anthony Lynn. So if we can look forward to his clock management skills, I think, that's hilarity should ensue for the whole of America. The defense, it may shock you, has had issues in the secondary for years.
I didn't know.
I know.
Sorry. Yeah. Whoa.
I mean, the fact that the starting corners are wearing 2 and 3, they're not fullbacks. Come on, this annoys me. This really offends me. It's not a good team. It needs to rebuild. They're not going to tank. They're not going to go, well, let's go 0-16 because, they've got this new coaching staff. They can't do that. But it's a team that is in better shape to rebuild in 2022 than it is now. And you sort of feel that if they were to fall into, accidentally, into a playoff run, like Washington did last year, you could argue, that would hurt them more than it would help them. So I expect this to be a team that, don't get me wrong, I would hope they would play hard for their coach, their fans, and each other. But I don't think they're very good.
My team has a new coach that no one believes in, has heard of, and did a really weird press conference when he started. I traded away my first round former franchise quarterback. I don't have that much talent on the roster, and I suck. Am I the Philadelphia Eagles or am I the Detroit Lions?
You could argue the Detroit Lions at least have a plan.
But this is what I'm saying, right? And I'm being flippant, only slightly to wind you up. But more. No, I don't, and that's why I'm not bothered. But people will be listening and me going like throwing headphones down, which is cool, right? I've got no problem with that. I can time check it if we want. What I'm trying to say is that this team won a Super Bowl 3 years ago now. Is it 3 years ago? 4. So get benefit of doubt in certain situations, right? Apart from in Philadelphia. This team stinks. Like, it's not very good. And for you on this podcast to suggest to me that the New York Football Giants are worse than this team leads me to believe that and then to say that the New York Football Giants are a not at all team blows my mind, because the only way the New York Football Giants can be worse than the Philadelphia Eagles is if the New York Football Giants win 2 games. Because this team is not very good. This quarterback, who is not a quarterback. It's not a quarterback. Like, the elephant in the room is the world nearly ended on the internet in New York because the Philadelphia Eagles took out Jalen Hurts for Nick Sudfeld. Neither of them can throw. Neither of them have shown in the NFL they can throw a football. The only time Jalen Hurts in his career has ever shown he can throw a football is when he has official quarterback whisperer Lincoln Riley with him. Did not throw the ball in Alabama. Ooh, it's great. He's back with Devontae Smith. Never threw it to Devontae fucking Smith. Never happened. I watched the games. It never happened. Do you know what they did? They gave it to Damian Harris and he ran it. That's what they did. Do you know what? Nick Saban decided at that point, balls to this, I actually need a quarterback who can throw. And since then, has got one. This defense stinks. There's no secondary whatsoever. There hasn't been for 15 years. Like, this is a team that made Nnamdi Asomugha crap. That's the level of bad secondary play. It's old. It's not very good. They should be tanking. So, for someone to tell me it momentarily, and it will be me, that the over-under in Las Vegas is 7, blows my mind. When, if you listen to people who know a lot more than me and you, the best situation you should be taking in Vegas is Philadelphia Eagles top 3 pick. Philadelphia Eagles winning the least games in the NFL. Do I think they'll win the least games in the NFL? No, because they have to play Washington, Dallas and the Giants, and they're all not very good. They're all okay, but they're not great. So being in a crap division saves you from being, crap. But they're at Atlanta versus the 49ers and at Dallas. The defence best be awake, because if it isn't awake, there's 40 burgers all over the place those first 3 weeks. Oh, don't worry though, game after that, Kansas City Chiefs. Welcome to hell. That is staring 0-4 in the face. And then, what do you do? I was going to be completely calm, but you completely sideswiped me with the Giants thing. So there you go. That's where I'm going with it. And Chal, you're welcome. Fantasy darling, Neil, on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, it's not Jalen Hurts, let's put it that way. Depends on how you look at it. And as I say, we are sort of dreamcasting as to what we think this offense would be. Now, if it is a run-focused offense similar to what the Ravens do, then you tend to like the running back. So Miles Sanders at the moment is going as running back 17. Now, here's a myth that I would like to bust for everyone. That myth is that Doug Peterson stifled Miles Sanders last year. Horse shit. Miles Sanders had one of the highest opportunity shares of any running back in the NFL. Do you know what hampered Miles Sanders last year? Having bricks for hands.
It's an issue.
No running back dropped more passes than Miles Sanders. Now, as we know with running backs, where they line up, these were not 40-yard downfield bombs. These were screens, they were little out routes, and he couldn't catch them. That is why Boston Scott is on the roster. That is why they drafted Kenny Gainwell. So if Miles Sanders can rediscover his pass-catching nous, and he caught 50 passes as a rookie and wasn't a particularly efficient runner, then last year he was quite an efficient runner and couldn't catch. If we can somehow meet in the middle, then as a running back 17, and considering, that he is probably the most talented running back on the Eagles, and he's got that thing that, some like to call it the Alfred Morris corollary, that linebackers are going to be watching the running quarterback, is going to open up things for the running back, then Sanders at running back 17 is quite a good investment. If you want to invest in the passing game, and why wouldn't you, Devonta Smith is going as the wide receiver 34. there's a good chance Devonta Smith leads this team in targets, receptions, touchdowns. I don't know. I think that might be Dallas Goedert. But I'd say wide receiver 34 as the lead wide receiver on a team that game script is probably going to dictate they'll throw more than they really want to. It's not terrible. And if you really, really want to, say, what the hell, let's have a piece of this, you can get Jalen Reagor at wide receiver 57. And who doesn't want a wide receiver who will run out of bounds at the first opportunity you can get on their fantasy roster?
Over under is 7. I think we know where I'm going. We'll get Neil's view now. More likely to be discussed by Draftniks. Not at all in week 18 or in the Super Bowl.
Well, it's Draftniks because they're going to have the
can't
ammunition.
Be Draftniks. It can't be Draftniks.
Listen. Nah. They will be discussed by Draftniks because, as I say, they have the ammunition to move anywhere they want in the draft. Okay. So that's how I get round you. No. This is a team. It's a bottom-dwelling team. Yeah, they may finish higher than the New York Giants, but the Giants are shite. So it does, just because you finished. I mean, just because you're taller than me here doesn't make you tall. He's 2'6". Just being 2'7" just makes you taller than him. So being better than the New York Giants when they're utter shit just makes you shit. We have seen situations last year where the 3 NFC East teams, other than the division winner, were all top 10 picks. It can still happen. It's just a question of how much can this staff develop their quarterback more than the Giants develop theirs. Now, if the Eagles were to lose Jalen Hurts for any length of time, could Nick Mullins or Joe Flacco come in and look competent? I don't know. Kyle Shanahan likes Nick Mullins. Say that what you will. Who's the backup in New York? I honestly don't know. Oh, it's Mike Glennon. So there you go. Yeah.
With his incredibly long neck.
Yeah, the dancing giraffe. But don't get it twisted. This team is shit.
No one's suggesting they're not. It's Draftniks, and I won't have it any other way. But what I would say is on the we've got loads of picks. Although, have you seen the last 4? You don't play Washington until week 15, which is after your bye week. Then you play the Giants and you play Washington again in week 17, and then Dallas. Very weird. In note to your we've got loads of draft picks scenario, Mike Garafolo, the NFL Network, retweeting a quote tweeting from Mike Silver. More on Wentz from Silver, who notes the Colts' early optimism has been dashed. Question now is whether Anderson will recommend surgery to correct the issue, or if Wentz can simply rehab. All indications are this isn't season-ending scenario, just a threat to the start of it. Someone start doing some math. That's right, math. And work out what 70% of snaps is and how many games I have to play to fit that in. Because otherwise, that first round draft pick is being shoved straight up your backside.
The Colts can keep their first round pick if they use a late round pick and trade for Nick Foles.
Yeah, cool. That could happen. It could happen.
Just, again, for the PR fume to sustain me.
It would. Next to the Washington football team, NFC East champs. The ugliest.
Let's be honest, it's being the best singer in One Direction, isn't it?
It's probably the best singer in Girls Aloud.
Yeah, sounds impressive, but ultimately, who gives a shit?
Ultimately, it means you're, the 700th best singer in, Darlington. I usually give a big question and then you go, but I'm going to not do that because the big question was, can Fitzmagic finally make the playoffs? But it's not now because I'm going to talk first. I'm trying to brace myself. I have no effing idea. I don't want to know why this team has the lowest vaccination rate in the NFL. I don't want to know. I don't care. I don't want to understand it. What I want it to do is be fixed. Like, immediately. Like, and trying not to say it in a bad way, right? But Washington have drafted players from certain colleges and locations in the in the Greater United States of America, right? And then are surprised that players from those locations, which voted in a certain way, which think in a certain way, aren't vaccinated. Sorry, that's how this goes. I am disgusted, and you can be with me on this or not. I am a cancer survivor, so I'm kind of in a better position than most people on this in relation to Ron Rivera. It offends me that these players who give a load of bullshit that Ron Rivera, they would run through a wall for Ron Rivera, won't get a vaccine for him. Makes me sick. Makes me angry. I don't want to hear no bullshit about why. Because you're not a scientist and you don't know what you're fucking talking about. Get off the internet. Get off Google. Listen to doctors because you know they know what they're talking about. I'll just put it clear. Like, my position on this is easy. If I didn't believe in doctors or vaccines or science, I'd be dead. And we wouldn't be doing this show. So if you don't want to take a vaccine, that's cool. Then I don't want you to see a doctor and I don't want you taking medicine. Go and live in a cave in the middle of fucking nowhere and get over it. Let's talk about the football team, as in them playing football. Is Fitzmagic finally going to make the playoffs?
Fitzmagic's best seasons have come where he started the season as the backup and been elevated to the starting job. When Fitzmagic starts the season as the starter, this is why he's never made the playoffs. The curse of Ryan Fitzpatrick is that he will always start 3 games when the starter gets hurt, injured, suspended or whatnot. And he'll come in and the players will play out their minds for him, because everyone who's ever been in the same room as Ryan Fitzpatrick, which I have at an NFL UK event, you have to love the guy. But I can't argue with history as a student of history. And every time he starts the season as the starting quarterback, bad things happen. But this is the best group of skill position players he's been around for quite some time. This is a quite progressive, forward-thinking offensive coach. These are young, talented players. Offensive line is still something of an issue. But in Ryan Fitzpatrick, you have a great equaliser. Doesn't matter how bad your offensive line is. It doesn't matter how good it is. If he thinks you're open, he's thrown you the ball. And for a team that has had occasional dalliances with adequacy for nearly 30 years, maybe you need that sense of, we're not supposed to do this, but let's try it anyway. So, as you say, you won the division last year. Great.
No, I know, yeah.
Wow, what an achievement! That we were the best shit team.
Woo.
Great. Let's hang the banner high. Now you have, as bizarre as it sounds, there is expectation. Because it's a slightly feel better story, not feel good. This is a poisonous, toxic environment and should be kicked out of the NFL because of the owner. And I say that with all respect in the world to you, but it's pond scum and rotten to the core. Ron Rivera is a good guy. He has created a culture within his players that, as you say, they should want to play for him. Get the job. It's a good offense. I love the pieces. Terry Mack is great. I like Curtis Samuel. Darby Brown is quite good. Adam Humphries, he's not finished yet, apparently. He's been flashing in camp. The boy running back, Antonio Gibson, could be better than he was last year, and he was pretty damn good. The defence, as we know, is by far and away the best in the division. Already started locking up a few of the players, spending the money that you don't have to spend on a quarterback, because, let's be honest, you're going to be asking this question again in 2022, however you get on. It's the best team in the division. It comes with the pressure of being the best team in the division, and it comes with the historical knowledge that when you start a season with Ryan Fitzpatrick, it's a roller coaster, and not always one that ends up going back up again.
I think that the interesting thing for Washington is, since, I guess, first season Robert Griffin III, there's a tremendous possibility that they're fun and interesting and watchable on offense. I think it should be clear they were great on defense last year, and they could be really good on defense this year, but I wouldn't expect them to be as good as they were last year, because defense doesn't necessarily work like that. It never has in the NFL. They've done well and got some additional players, upgraded the corners, new linebacker, another year of Chase Young. It's all excellent, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be as good as you were on defense last year. It's fine. To say the quarterback is the exact opposite of the quarterbacks that they had last year does not do justice to the word exact opposite. They basically didn't throw it more than like 30 centimeters ahead of them last year, and there's a chance they throw every ball 30 yards away from them this year, and that comes with concerns and issues, but it'll be fun, and it probably means they'll be in a lot of games because the defense will also make plays. Concerns for Washington are the Ryan Fitzpatrick corollary. It's got to be known. Expectation. And a fast-paced schedule, which gives them games like at the Buffalo Bills, against the Green Bay Packers, also the Kansas City Chiefs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. These aren't easy games. However, from week 13, when they're at Las Vegas on Sunday, December the 5th, every other game is in division from week 14 on. So 5 straight games in division is interesting because it means you're still in a hunt regardless of what's happened before that. You know my thoughts on this team. I don't get, or try desperately not to get emotionally invested early on in this team because they constantly disappoint and have done since 1992. It's probably the best roster they've had since then. Does that mean they win? Probably not, because, you know, as you quite rightly point out, not necessarily the front office anymore, but the ownership is, you know, not a very nice person, yeah. And due to that, karma's a bitch. So you kind of usually have to deal with those consequences, right? Although, I say that, their ownership model hasn't exactly been great in previous decades, and they won Super Bowls, but that's a different conversation. This team's the best team in the division and should win it. I find it laughable when you listen to talking heads on American telly telling me how good Dallas are. Like, watch a game of Dallas's offensive line from last year and tell me how they keep Dak Prescott upright against Washington. And then, in the same breath, tell me how they stop us from scoring. Because I watched us play them on Thanksgiving with, you know, nowhere near as good a quarterback as Ryan Fitzpatrick, and we set them on fire. So I don't understand how anyone thinks they're better than Washington. But anyway, that's for them to decide, right?
Absolutely.
Fancy darling on the Washington football team, Neil?
Well, it was Curtis Samuel, but then obviously the news that he's banged up. So you have Diami Brown, who's the wide receiver 91, but also you have Adam Humphries, who I don't even think's being drafted.
No.
So I don't like it. Obviously, there's no stealing Terry McLaurin or Logan Thomas this year. You're not sneaking them onto your roster. If you want them, you're paying up for them. So if you want another piece, if you play PPR formats and you're looking for a deep option, you know, what the heck flex, well, we saw how involved JD McKissick was last year. Now, let's hope he isn't and that Antonio Gibson can take on a bit more passing down work. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, is he going to check down to JD McKissick more, as much as Alex Smith did? No, don't think so. So if we want someone who's going to make plays downfield, again, this is very, very late in drafts, probably last pick, assuming you haven't taken a defense or kicker, then Diami Brown, wide receiver 91, is not terrible. He may be one of the first players that you churn in the first couple of weeks. But if he looks like he's got a role from day one, which if Curtis Samuel is missing, he might do, because it might be McLaurin on the outside with Adam Humphries in the slot. We'll see how we go.
Over under is 8. More likely to be discussed by Draftniks in Week 18 in the Super Bowl, or not at all?
To Week 18 for me, because as I say, I think they're clearly the best team in the division. But as much as I love them, I don't see Ryan Fitzpatrick taking them on a Super Bowl run.
No.
It's a one and done. Maybe sneak a win. If you get that, you get a home game, but going deep, playing a championship Sunday. Nah, sorry.
No, Week 18 as well for me. You've got to set your roster ready and show Aaron Rodgers that you are in a position to win a Super Bowl if you can get a quarterback to take you over the top, he says, possibly tongue-in-cheek. What I will say about the thing, I said it already, is they've got a division leading schedule, which is an issue. First 3 games is against the Chargers at home. It is West Coast travelling east at 6 p.m, so there is a benefit there. They then play the Giants on Thursday night, and for those who are unaware of the NFC East, the Giants always beat Washington. I think Daniel Jones has lost once to Washington, which is incredible, as he's, as we've quite rightly pointed out multiple times, garbage. Then they play at Buffalo, at the Falcons, versus the Saints, versus the Chiefs, at Green Bay, and at Denver before the bye. Make or break at that point. If they have a winning record there, it's game on for the division, and then we'll see where we go, right? You get a home playoff game, and maybe one year they'll win one. I doubt it, but we never know.
Get to the tournament.
Correct. I guess NFC East, I'm going Washington, Dallas, Giants, Eagles. Neil, you are, I guess, Washington, Dallas, Eagles, Giants.
Yeah.
But
I don't care.
But it's a mismatch of, nonsense bowling. Neil, that's enough for us. Couple of classic rants, so spectacular stuff. Where can people catch you before we're back again next week?
On the Twitter at @ndutton13. This week I've had 3 articles for Number Fire, one about Calvin Ridley, one Irv Smith, and one my boy TJ Hawkinson. And as we recorded, I had my latest piece for 4for4 Football published, and it was about which running back should you be drafting from the Denver pair of Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams. So check that out. And also, if you like the other game that I associate with, you should check out the 19 for 90 podcast with me and Joe Russell, where we talk about all things cricket related, but especially the build-up to the Test series with India starting next week.
I am at Mainz7, as Neil said. He's at ndutton13. Combine with at waxing_lyrical. We are posting these not only on the usual places, but also a small article on the touchdown.co.uk, where we're putting a number of podcasts from all the team on the website. Give it a look, give it a read. Some great stuff. One today from Cy Carroll on the news of Texas and Oklahoma becoming Southeastern Conference members. And for those who watch college, that's big news. We don't, but that'll be fun because they're playing a lot of big games, and that'll be interesting, and they'll be on BT Sport hopefully, so we shall see. Next week, the AFC South, which just got very interesting on the Carson Wentz news, and we will see whether Derrick Henry can still run with another 7 million touches. Until then, however, these top guys are out. Enjoy your weekend, guys.